Due to ineffectual fire management policies in America, many of our towns are one bad spark away from being the next disaster headline. Here, where I live, in Anchorage, Alaska, this area is packed with thousands of dead trees and debris. Forest fuel, or combustible biomass. And here's the scary part. We're not cleaning up enough of it, because the experts have been sounding the alarm for decades, saying that all of South Anchorage could burn, leaving nearly 15% or 40,000 people without a home, their belongings, or anywhere to go. All of that could come to pass in an 8-hour time frame with the right winds. With the extreme lack of snow, we could be gearing up this year for the worst fire the state has ever seen. Before we dive into the details, if you like this type of content breaking down government, power, or the issues that actually affect us, please consider subscribing to any of my channels. If you find this valuable, I'd really appreciate it. All right, back to the fire. But first, the ingredients for flame: oxygen, fuel, and ignition. This creates combustion and releases tons of stored heat in everyday objects. The way we measure this is in BTUs, or British thermal units. Basically the amount of heat required to raise the temperature of 1 pound of water by 1 degree Fahrenheit. The amount of fuel in the form of BTUs that's stored in a single medium-sized spruce tree is nearly 5 million BTUs of energy. For reference, one of these trees is the BTU equivalent of an open barrel of diesel fuel sitting behind people's homes, on municipal lands, scattered by the thousands across the Anchorage hillside. South Anchorage alone has an estimated 500,000 dead spruce trees. That's the energy equivalent of 18 million gallons of diesel fuel, sitting, ready to ignite. This isn't a hypothetical. This is in every fire assessment report, every Firewise study, every wildfire risk map that's been put out for decades. The warnings are there in black and white, and yet almost none of the fuel has been cleared. Instead, millions of dollars that should have gone toward fuel reduction, cutting fire breaks, thinning dead trees, removing the fuel before it burns, get spent elsewhere. What do we actually do with it? We've spent a ton on response, not on prevention. On helicopters and emergency services instead of stopping the fire from starting in the first place, which is like installing more life jackets on the Titanic instead of steering away from the iceberg. Under the right conditions, low humidity, high winds, and a single ignition point, the fire just doesn't burn, it explodes. In the worst case scenario outlined by experts, with the wind pushing flames uphill at just 20 miles an hour, fire could move so fast that every home in South Anchorage could be engulfed in just 8 hours. In fact, this is the map outlined by a 2023 study put out by UAA showing the risk for structural damage, which spells out the concentration of fuel close to homes. Large swaths of South Anchorage are in the upper 10th and 20th percentile, but it's not just here. Even at my house in Valley of the Moon, I'm somehow in jeopardy, in the middle of the urban core of the city. I'm surrounded by an energy company's easement on the back of my house, which had been unmaintained since long before I moved in. And across the street from my house in the front, municipal parklands, which has been effectively terraformed by a homeless population that was only cleared for the first time in the last few weeks. They had been building up windbreaks by cutting down trees for years. And when the city cleared the camps, they left giant bonfire piles within throwing distance to my front door. This isn't my land, yet it poses a huge threat to my house. If either side catches on fire and the trees decide to fall toward the vast nothingness, they'll hit my house and there will be nothing I can do. A lot of Anchorage is privately owned, and that's where the next big issue comes in. Because while municipal land mismanagement is one problem, private landowners are sitting on some of the worst fire hazards in the city, and there's little to no enforcement to make them clean it up. Take a drive up hillside and you'll see it. Acres and acres of unmanaged forests filled with beetle-killed spruce, standing deadwood and dry underbrush just waiting for a spark. The risk doesn't stop at property lines. Fire doesn't care who owns the land, it burns. Now, the libertarian in me says there's nothing we can do. That's people's private property, let it all burn. But in reality, the cities and individuals' lack of taking care of their own land that they own is putting all of our property at risk, because right now, there's no mandate to force landowners to clear the most dangerous fuel loads. It's entirely voluntary. This isn't just Anchorage or Alaska, this is what fire management looks like in America. We have stopped all the small fires and gone against the natural order, and so when these things do burn, they burn unnaturally hot. There's little anyone can do. Firefighters are the only profession that we ask to stop natural disasters, and somehow we found a way to make it even worse on them. So we can either manage the fuel loads or we can watch all of our homes burn. This is what just happened in California leading up to the LA fires. In the Black Forest Fire in Colorado, in the Lahaina Fire in Hawaii. Fires that started in wildland areas but moved into homes because the fuel was never cleared. And here's the brutal truth. If a wildfire starts in the Anchorage hillside and gets big enough, the fire department won't be able to stop it. Not before entire neighborhoods are reduced to ash. If a wind-driven wildfire breaks out in South Anchorage, they can't save every home. The best they can do is try to control the edges and evacuate people before it's too late. Which means that if you live in Anchorage, you need to understand something. When this fire starts, you will be on your own. People who have lived through wildfires will tell you by the time evacuation orders are issued, it's often already too late. That's why in California, entire families burned alive in their cars, trapped on clogged roads, trying to escape. And for many residents in South Anchorage, there's only one way in and one way out. So what's the solution? It's simple. We must start removing fuel. We must demand that the municipal, state, and private landowners do their part. This is a wake-up call because fire requires three things: oxygen, fuel, and ignition, and we have an abundance of two of those. Once this match is lit, there will be no putting it out.